My name is Jenkins. I am the Deputy Commissioner for Telecommunications Planning for the City of New York's Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications. I manage, look at do it as a short acronym for Department of IT and Telecom. We are solution architects for the mayor's initiative to proliferate broadband across New York City to everyone, everywhere by 2025. I manage a variety of different units in order to do that: franchise administration, to telecommunications contracts and negotiations, to telecommunications planning and resiliency offices, and a newly formed broadband planning unit. Actually, it's been the biggest year ever for New York City's Connected City vision. What we've done is sort of architect a convergence of those incumbents that had been operating somewhat in a dormant fashion around New York City without having been federated, let's say, and assumed leadership by the city. What we've done is sort of collaborated with those incumbents and brought them together and talked about some common denominators, that common denominator being how to provide a service footprint area of free public Wi-Fi in the City of New York under some of the same policies, regulations, security, privacy, operations, and technical services that they were all offering independently at one time, all under different levels of performance and quality of service. So the city has sort of corralled this group and federated this group, and now with new deployments like LinkNYC, as well as Transit Wireless being a really large franchisee and deploying free public Wi-Fi across New York, we will have the largest footprint of free public Wi-Fi services in any urban market anywhere in the world. I think overall the population is embracing broadband now more as it would an absolutely necessary utility. They're looking at it as though it is just as vital as having electricity, power, and water into their neighborhoods, and they can't get enough of free public broadband or broadband in general fast enough. So their embracement has been how fast can the city introduce broadband, specifically to underserved areas. As you may know, there's 21% of New Yorkers within the 5 boroughs that do not have internet service, and 35% of those below the poverty level do not have. And that's millions of people in New York City. And so the faster the government, and specifically our agency, can craft new solutions, new strategies for being able to provision broadband faster to the public, the faster the public will embrace it. We have done things like built community centers and adoption locations so that we can introduce broadband to the public at large a lot faster so they can digest it quicker and then become a lot more influential in their everyday life, whether it's healthcare, transportation, whether it's being civically engaged, what have you. The city has begun programs to engage their citizens with the use of broadband so much faster than any other place, because we look at it as a part of social broadband engineering, if you will, and we consider it to be a great part of what we do, and our public at large really embraces that idea from the city. Well, here's a lot of what's going on now. One is that we've got 550 some odd LinkNYC kiosks that are in the street today. By this time next year, we'll have 1,000 more Link kiosks, and we're already serving large portions of Manhattan. We're in the Bronx, we're in Brooklyn, we've just gotten into Staten Island, and we're serving Queens. Expect to see a large growth of Wi-Fi use in the city of New York by just placing 1,000 new kiosks in the street. We have 180 some odd underground transit wireless subway stations that have free public Wi-Fi. Now imagine this time next year we have 279 of those built and we're starting to build Wi-Fi on top of the platform. So the connectivity of just those two franchisees alone will increase the everyday user subscribership to 2 to 10x more in New York City. So the growth of connectivity is going to explode in the city, notwithstanding the city also investing into its housing authority locations. There's 315 of those in New York, over 2,000 some odd buildings. And what the city has done, it's taken its own money and invested in building free public Wi-Fi services in those housing authorities to serve thousands of underserved, predominantly large households with students, right? So the connectivity for education and for healthcare and for senior services, transportation services, etc., is going to skyrocket in the city over the next years, not just next year, but every single year thereafter. There's going to be at least a 2 or 5x growth of Wi-Fi infrastructure and connectivity across the city, not to mention that we're doing some experimentation with the Internet of Things devices and sensors and other types of operations that make a city smart. And then we're collaborating the agencies, the Department of Transportation, Economic Development Corporation, Department's city planning, department's design and construction units, and we're bringing them into one room to have one discussion as to how the city can better serve its constituents, particularly its city agencies, in terms of broadband services and devices and solutions and strategies, so that we can actually spend our budget and our capital as one New York City, opposed to having a spin from multiple different agencies with different ideas going on at one time. So we're doing a lot now, and we're going to be doing so much more over the next years to come. It is a think tank, I think, of innovative ideas, strategies, solutions for licensed and unlicensed broadband proliferation over any city. The discussions that we have has such a broad range, and it touches every single municipality's need, thirst, appetite for information, whether it's a small solution or a large solution and or strategy that you need to get to. The CCAB covers every step of the way, from the governance and the leadership of broadband ideas to the strategies in terms of spectrum use, to strategies of how to understand the use of citywide real property assets. It gets into discussions as to how to monetize networks, whether it's city-owned, whether it's private-owned. We get into issues like private-public partnerships that have been something that city agencies may not have ever explored before with the private sector. We talk about how to engage with the academia sectors in cities, of which cities have not engaged, in reference to collaborating on deployment of services, piloting different services for city use. We get into other discussions that have been, let's say, long awaited for both the telecommunications operators, as well as the cities, as well as other private sector members, to all collaborate in one place to talk about strategies, solutions, ideas, and become innovative in terms of taking them to the next step. This is what we learn at CCAB for New York. This is what I leave every single time at a CCAB event with. Different knowledge that I can take and use to build my own New York-centric strategy. And I would suggest that any city who participates in CCAB will leave with that same amount of innovative and creative ideas to go back to build their own city-centric strategy.